With 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys being sexually abused, it is a major concern in our society, but seldom discussed, especially in relation to boys and the men they become. This is a recording of an interview on the We Not Know show at Phonic FM between Jonathan Mehy and John Slater, who co-runs Momentum, a support group for male survivors of childhood sexual abuse here in Devon, for survivors, run by survivors. Discussion does not go into detail of abuse, but it's about how sexual abuse can affect us in relation to trauma, and importantly, how it is possible to find understanding, support, and healing and recovery in our lives. Momentum not only supports male survivors of childhood sexual abuse, but also campaigns for better support for all survivors and victims. We appreciate this subject can be difficult, and it has impacts on many of us. So do consider what support you have when listening, and you can always stop and return to it later. If you need support, you can call Momentum on 0777 315 1080, and details of further support and 24-hour help are available on our Momentum website at momentumdevon.org.uk, all lowercase, no gaps. Not enough is understood about male survivors of childhood sexual abuse, and this talk will provide an insight into that and why it is so important to so many survivors, friends, family and professionals in mental health and allied services. If you need support urgently, right now, you can call the Samaritans on free phone 116 123. Thank you.
Okay, that was E17 here on Phonic FM, and our guest has arrived.
Morning, Jonathan.
Morning. It's it's John from Momentum. I believe Momentum has been discussed on other shows here on Phonic FM.
Yes, a while ago. Yes.
So if you want to say a bit about what Momentum is and a bit about what you do and what it's all regarding, really.
Right. Okay. Yeah. We'll do, Jonathan. So Momentum is a mutual support group for male survivors of childhood sexual abuse. We run a group in Barnstable and another one in Exeter. And perhaps the first thing to say is, before I say anything else, in case you're not listening to the whole of this or you find it too much, but it has affected you, our number to contact us is 07773 151 080, 07773 151 080, and our email is all lowercase, momentumdevon@gmail.com, momentumdevon@gmail.com. And then really, we know how difficult it can be to disclose that you've been sexually abused in childhood, and our group is really about being able to provide a safe place where we can do that. And what we try and make sure is, we never pry. Everything is at your pace. You can just take things steady and you can join in as you want. Everybody's very supportive. Some things you cannot hurry, and healing from childhood sexual abuse and trauma is definitely one of them. So we're here, whether you need to meet with us once or just have a telephone conversation, or some people have been with us for a few years even along the line. We're there, and you might want support for a while, you go away, you come back, so it's something constant that can help you work these things through.
How long have you been has Momentum been going as an organisation?
We've been going 8 years
8 years
now.
So that would be up to 2013?
2012 we sort of started, but we started very gradually. What actually happened was, this is something that has affected me, and it was a
affected me as well.
Yeah, to both of us. And it's quite a long journey, isn't it?
It is a very, very long journey.
Where we need support.
Yes.
So for me, really, it took decades before I felt in a position to even talk about it.
Yep.
I had a number of mental health problems. I even ended up in psychiatric hospital. I lost my job as a result. I went on to an ill health pension for a while. So it became very, very difficult indeed, and very hard to explain to people. And of course the added problem was, as I was regarded to have a mental health problem, the concentration was on the mental health problem, not on why. In other words, I'd like to have been asked what happened to me rather than be told what's wrong with me. And that kind of delayed the help I could have got for a long time. Then eventually I did manage to disclose to a mental health worker. And then I was able to get some support around that. And then it was suggested I went to a group therapy program called Message, which a local mental health trust was running at that time. And they've just started running it again, I must add. And that was quite an experience. I remember hovering around the door thinking, shall I, shan't I? How am I going to manage this?
Yeah, it can be quite a...
very nerve-wracking.
It can be quite a nerve-wracking experience to
Absolutely.
go into.
It's a big deal to be able to talk about these things. You're not sure how people are going to receive you. But I managed to get in there, and I thought, I'll just stay and see where we go. And the kind of lovely thing was, for all we said, the facilitators there, they were so kind. One of the facilitators, he made a cake. He made a cake for everybody. And he did that every week. It was lovely. And then we started making cakes and bringing those in. So there's these guys making cakes and everything. And of course, and then the other end is at the end, we would talk about things like football and Formula One. And I have absolutely no interest in football or Formula One, but somehow in doing that, it kind of made it okay. For all we might have tried to talk about, it was kind of all right. It made it kind of, it's not necessarily the right word to use, it made it kind of normal, made it kind of okay to be with. And then out of that group, the 12 of us found it really helpful that we'd been able to talk with other people who've been through the same experience. That was quite a relief. And I remember sort of like when I did sort of, after a few weeks, I did disclose what had happened to me, and I kind of put my hands over my head just waiting for the world to collapse. And it didn't. There was a lovely support. The floor didn't open and I disappeared. It was okay. And then from that, of course, it was only 12 sessions. So it didn't go on. And then where'd you go from there?
Exactly.
And of course, the sad thing we found was, within our services as they are, there ain't always the right support. It's not always there, or you don't quite fit. Quite a lot of people fall into a gap between primary and secondary care.
And I think I have experience of that, and it can be quite challenging at times, because a lot of the time you're trying to communicate with all these different people. You're trying to communicate over the phone. You don't want to be an inconvenience to anybody.
Exactly. Yes.
The services are overstretched. So I am quite accustomed to that. So I do know what it's like. So from that, I'm presuming you got together with somebody else and started up a group called Momentum.
I mean, 3 of us in the group was from that group, and we just started to we were literally having a chat at the bus stop after the meeting. And then as it progressed, we sort of ended up going for a coffee, and then the people running the group encouraged us to keep into contact and see what we could do. And then it sort of, it formed into a group. And that's, like we say, that's been running 8 years now. We've started another group in Exeter. And that started around a lot of people who got drug and alcohol problems as well. And how many of those people,
there's often a reason why you have an addiction.
There is.
You don't just think, there are great difficulties going on for you. You're trying to find some means to cope, whatever that will be.
Quite a lot of drug and alcohol addictions are because you're dealing with other stuff under the surfaces. Under the surface, and it's a means or a way to cope for a lot of people. It's a coping mechanism.
It is. That's really important for people to remember. That can often be seen as symptoms. But it's actually your means of trying to cope.
There's for a lot of people there's an underlining reason why somebody is depressed. And a lot of the time that is trauma.
Exactly.
It might be undisclosed trauma. But I would still like to say that you can still suffer from depression even if you haven't had trauma.
Exactly.
So it can be quite a challenging issues to raise. But I would also like to reiterate that therapy can be very successful for a majority of people, for a lot of people. But I've noticed from my own previous experience that until you start treating the actual underlying cause, you can go to as many therapy sessions as you want, and therapy can get very expensive. You're not gonna because you can talk to a therapist until you're blue in the face, but unless you are treating the actual problem and speaking about the actual problem, you're not going to get to the bottom of. You're not going to be able to move on from the underlying cause.
I think exactly, and that has to be in the therapy room. That has to be part of the work, but at your pace. And I think one of the risks that can occur with therapy is we are in a world of austerity. People are looking for shorter interventions.
They
are. You do need time in therapy to actually start to trust and to feel safe and to get some stabilisation before you maybe start to process the trauma itself. You need time to do that. And in a way, that's what we're trying to do. We might be therapeutic, but we're certainly not therapy. So we would encourage people to try and find therapy, and we support people to try and do that as well. And there's various ways, and we can advise you on that if you contact us. But we are therapeutic. We are giving the time for you to be able to start talking about things at your own pace, and we don't pry, and you just say what you want to say when you're ready to say.
There's no pressure to say anything.
No pressure at all. I mean, one man came, and he came for 4 sessions. He talked a tiny bit with me, because we often meet people individually first, because it's quite daunting, the idea of coming in.
And I think that's...
Why would I want to go and sit with a group of guys and talk about sexual abuse?
And I think that's really... that's something to talk about. I think that's really nice of you to actually go to that for like a team of people that run it, to go and meet people first before they come to a group, because that can be quite challenging, going somewhere that you don't know for the first time and meeting a bunch of people that you don't know. It's very, very challenging.
I mean, everybody is very welcoming, but it's hard to believe that before you step in the room. And sometimes people really do need time. Remember the gentleman I was about to talk about then, he came 4 times, and then on the 5th visit he handed me a piece of paper, and on it he'd written what had happened to him as a child and asked me to read it out, and that was his way of being able to start talking about it. Then the response he got from everybody else was very welcoming, very affirming, very understanding. His experience was reflected in others, so he knows he's not alone with that. And it's the same with how we operate in Momentum. It's not trying to get bums on seats in a group. There is the group, but it's about your healing individually, each person, even though we're a group. So it might be that you need a bit of time to meet individually, or with 2 of us first. Some people, one person, for example, got in contact on the phone, then we met, and then he found it the second time he started to feel it was too much. even though we're very careful. And then he sent an email saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've messed that up. I've burnt my bridges, that's it." And I said, "No, you haven't burnt any bridges. You just came across for a while and you've gone back and you can come back whenever." And we just carried on emailing for about a year. Mm-hmm. And then he managed to talk on the phone. So we talked on the phone a bit. Then he helped him find a therapist. He did some therapy work. And then we'd start meeting up. And then eventually he came to the group. Was able to work on things from there. So it can be quite a gradual process, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. Okay. Rather than, we'll give you 8 sessions. Yeah. There are things that will do that are very helpful. But this is to give longer term support on your terms, you coming as and when you want, really.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good. And you are on various social media. Facebook is.
We have a little WhatsApp group, and there is a Facebook group. We will get that information out to people in a month or so. We're just building a website at the moment.
We are in the process of building a website.
Yeah. So it's coming.
So and I would like to add that we get the group momentum. The name can get confused between.
I know. We were first.
Politicians. Yeah, we were first. Can I
just say I interrupted, John. Are you sure you got the right name for this group earlier on?
Yes.
So that was just because I didn't know.
That's all right. No, so we're a community interest company now, not for profit, so that's just started. So we're looking for donations, everybody. Yeah. But so we are called Momentum Devon Community Interest Company. That's our name now. But to distinguish ourselves from any other organisation, we spell momentum with capital MEN, MEN.
Okay.
To emphasise, what we're about.
It's good to distinguish, yeah.
Yeah. And there's kind of 2 things I'd like to mention, if that's okay.
Yeah.
One is about the prevalence of childhood sexual abuse with boys.
Yeah.
And there is a kind of, I remember a senior director in a mental health service in the middle of a meeting saying, "Was there much of this with boys then?"
Right.
And, I think there's an idea that it's quite rare that this would happen to boys. Well, it's not quite rare, it's quite hidden. Yeah. And, of course, boys find it very difficult to talk about. And as they grow up, they find it still very difficult to talk about. So there's a kind of, because it's quite hidden, so there's assumption that it's a much less of a thing with boys, a rarer thing. But it's actually, conservative estimates at the moment by leading organisations put it at 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused in childhood.
That's considerably high.
Yeah, and we know, and by an Australian study, at least 60% of people presenting at mental health services door will have been sexually or physically abused in childhood. I know many staff that might put that nearer 90%. So it's a major part of what mental health services deal with. And what we're calling for is for mental health services to recognise that. Yeah. That doesn't mean you've got to delve and go into it, but the respect to understand and to be knowledgeable about sexual abuse in men as well as women, and what this can lead to and how that relates to those symptoms. Yeah. And with that understanding and having a proper trauma-informed organisation, this is one thing that we would love to see that is really lacking, is we don't have a trauma service. We don't have a situation where a man can pick up the phone, explain what's happened, and the wheels get in motion and the support starts coming and he can understand what's going. He will end up scrabbling all over the place, trying to find something. People usually come to us after a long search. I'm glad to say Devon Rape Crisis do work with men now. They work with men up to the age of 25. Yep. But they now work with all gender now. So, any man can also contact them, including about childhood sexual abuse.
Didn't they higher the age Devon Rape Crisis, they put the age up?
Yeah, well, it was up to 25. I mean, it's not because they didn't want to see men. It's just a question of funding, and of course it still is. And I think that's the same for all of us in the third sector. Is the struggle to get enough funding to offer.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And we still meet lots of men scrabbling around trying to find some form of therapy. But what we want to assure them is there is support as you work through this, and you can come with us. But I think another point to add about the scale of it that shows it very well is I just picked up an article yesterday via BBC News, which was about a lady that had opened up on our WhatsApp group, and somebody had sent images of a child being sexually abused, and I think the poor soul that sent it, the object was my God, look what I've ended up getting on my
WhatsApp.
Yeah, but of course, that was very distressing for everybody. And out of that, the BBC News is reporting that it's currently estimated 100,000 adults regularly view child sexual abuse involving boys and girls.
Right.
And it's also known that 250,000 WhatsApp accounts a month are suspended for spreading child sexual abuse material.
Right.
So this is a massive issue.
Yeah, it is a massive.
Not only for the individual person that suffered the abuse, but in our society as well. And it affects things in many ways. So it affects prison populations, and many men, finding it difficult to communicate about these things, dealing with their emotions, because a lot of healing is actually about feelings and being able to be with your feelings and dealing with your feelings and not being overwhelmed and not disassociating and all the rest of it. How can I be with myself? One of the biggest things you hear from men is, who am I? And they feel very fragmented inside because of this. You try and block things off to try and cope with everyday life. So that's involved, and of course, as we said, mental health services and so on. And it's such a shame there is so little support for victims, and this crime and trauma remains hidden. But that's why we're here, and that's what we're trying to grow, and we encourage. And we did a training day with a gentleman called Mike Liu from America.
From Boston?
Boston, yeah, who's a sort of world-leading expert on male childhood sexual abuse.
Yep.
And we were able to get together with him, and we did a training day for 128 mental health staff and staff working in drug and alcohol services. And we also ran a workshop, a 3-day workshop for male survivors of childhood sexual abuse, which we hope to do again if we can.
And the 3-day workshop was successful?
Yeah, very successful. And the lovely thing is, many of us from that group are still in contact by email now, and emails are going backwards and forwards every day, and we have connections with people in Germany and Norway and Australia.
Yeah, that's
great. There's some really good support amongst survivors out there, and it's a good way. It's good to have other ways of being able to connect as well as face-to-face. People, maybe a bit of distance, it can feel a bit safer, and you can email and talk over issues. And how
being
do I
able
work
to
with
email
this?
and correspond on various forms of social media is a very good. It's very good. It can sometimes make the whole experience of communicating, easier, and like you say, people do feel safer. And going back to Mike Liu, I do have a short video I want to play, and he does talk for a very short time.
Yeah.
But and he has several books available regarding the subject of childhood sexual abuse.
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of books.
And trauma.
Yeah, number of books. One I find very helpful, and maybe this is a good suggestion that anybody who's thinking about, can I ring you, can I contact, they're not sure, how do I start working with this? And if you can't connect, if that's too much, this book is called Victims No Longer, by Mike Liu. If you Google that, you'll find it. And that can be a really helpful way to start. It's very welcoming, it's very understanding, and it deals with all those things that are going through you. Why am I behaving like this? Why am I struggling with this? Why can't I just get on with things? Why? All the things that are, was it really abuse?
Yeah.
Which is often a big question.
There's always some doubt.
Yes, because there's a lot of, one of the key things, probably for all survivors, but for men, is around shame and around isolation. I often find with men, it's very difficult to talk about these things. And when you hit that moment, when you really need help, that's the moment when you disappear and you withdraw.
Yep.
You know, people often come back after 3 weeks and say, I've been through a really dark time. We're here. You know?
Yep.
But it's hard to connect because there's a lot of shame connected with it and so on. And again, that makes it really difficult to deal with and discuss. So it's Victims No Longer.
Okay.
By Mike Lew.
And presumably, if you Google that, you'll be able to find Mike Lew and the books. I think they would be available on in all good book retailers and
yes,
online.
I mean there is one site where you can have a quick look inside the book to get an idea, but maybe I shouldn't say.
No, I think I
Shall we?
That.
Well,
they do that to promote it. You know?
Yes, okay. So you can look on. Yes, we can say.
Yes.
Yes, so we can look on. If you go on the Amazon site, you will be able to. It doesn't work on your smartphone, but if you look at it on the computer or your laptop, you will be able to look inside the book, and that will give you an idea of it and whether it's for you. Okay. But of course, there are other good booksellers in which you can find it, and one that might maybe also
go into a real bookshop.
Exactly.
Take down the book. Browse the book.
Yes.
Provided you buy one cup of coffee sometime during the day.
Absolutely, you've got to buy the coffee.
Stay in the bookshop.
Yeah.
Coffee's always good. Anyway, we're going to play a short clip from Mike Lew now.
Yeah. And if I wasn't doing this interview today, if I could only have 2 minutes, if you're a survivor out there struggling right now, this is what I would like you to hear.
Okay.
Initially, in recovery, what many men do is try to gather information, often anonymously. They'll read books. They'll go online and go to websites that will provide them with information. So often there's a period of gathering information without actually speaking to anyone. Then there's an initial disclosure to someone, sometimes a professional, sometimes a partner, a friend, a family member, someone who just possibly might be safe. If the response is positive and encouraging, then the recovery proceeds. If the response is negative and shaming, the wounded animal scurries back into the burrow, perhaps for decades. Often there's therapy or counseling of some kind that's very helpful individually, and then later in the process, some sort of group experience. I think it's vital for survivors to meet other survivors, to hear their stories coming out of someone else's mouth, to be believed and be understood in a way that no one who hasn't had that experience can completely understand them. And when I do groups, often the first reaction to the group meetings is, oh my God, I never thought that anyone would believe me or understand me. And here are these guys who get it. So one's network, one's support system, one's allies increase, the ripples spread, and eventually people see the same strengths and creativity in themselves that they've already seen in others, in their peers. What I would urge any survivor is, please don't give up. I know it's hard, but it's absolutely worth it. The results justify the struggle.
Okay, so I hope that's that's helpful to you if you're trying to deal with that and you're listening this morning. And he mentioned about scurrying back into the burrow, and that's the difficult bit when we're trying to disclose. And so maybe if I just said a little bit about why it can be so difficult to disclose and to explain about things. I mean, what we now know is it takes on average 26 years for that boy that's abused to disclose his abuse and to start trying to seek some help. Mm-hmm. And that's just the ones that manage that.
Yeah.
Most men never do.
Yeah.
You know, and sadly there will be men who, as we know, sadly know from the group, that, you know, there will be men that don't disclose, and they take their lives trying to live with the struggle of that abuse and the trauma of that abuse. For me, for example, I did disclose, and it only took me 40 years. So that's, you know, and once you have, you know, when I've managed to disclose and I've met people that understand, you think, oh, why didn't I do, you know? Well, you can only do it when you can do it. But, you know, my thoughts before that was, you know, I will lose my relationship, people won't want to know me, people will be disgusted, it was my fault anyway. There is an element of, a lot of people are groomed, as I was. And, you know, I guess what's happening to you is bad. Somebody's doing something that is actually a crime that isn't okay, but they kind of make you complicit in that.
They do.
So it's kind of, you start to feel bad, and because it's silenced, it stops being the what is happening is bad. It becomes, I am bad. You become the bad thing, and then you're left struggling with that without anyone around you. And then there becomes a kind of division in that you might end up in this world where the abuse is happening, where you can get very confused in that you kind of feel it's bad and you hate it and you wish it wasn't, but part of you feels you've been cared about, or you're safe when you're absolutely not. And this sort of ends up fragmenting you and making it difficult. So, you know, those are the kind of difficulties. And then on top of that, it's a difficult subject for people to deal with, to talk about, to accept, not only in society itself, but for the victim themselves. So there can be a lot of trying to push it away, great doubts, disbelief within yourself, trying to change it around and things like that. But because of that, because we're not open and honest about this, it then leads to a lot of myths that don't get challenged. So you can have myths such as, you know, men can't be sexually abused, that's not the same thing, or it's only gay men and boys are sexually abused. It's nothing to do with your sexuality, it's to do, you know, there's two words in this. Childhood. So child and sex. And that's something, that's not okay. So, you know, that's something people are going to stay with. But actually, it's the same as any other abuse. It's the abuse of power.
It is. It is.
And how that affects you. So that's, you know, that's what we're essentially dealing with. Nothing to do with our sexuality whatsoever. Exactly. And that can get very confusing for men sometimes. They think, oh, am I gay because I was being abused? Or was I abused because I'm gay? What am I? I don't know. You can be very confused about it. And also that, you know, boys are only abused by men. That is not.
That's not true.
That is not true. Yes, in a lot of cases, but they are abused by some women as well. And we've met those people in our group, so we know it changes. And then, but of course, that grooming and so on, it leads to the whole idea: was it my fault? Did I really want it? You might have had automatic response sexual feelings around that, which you don't intend. It's a bodily action. It happens. So that can also be very difficult. And the worst problem at all, and we have met this, I'm afraid, being sexually abused will make you an abuser.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's always said, and it was actually said to me several times.
Yes, it's surprising how many men come to us and they've had that.
As soon as I've heard one of my doctor's responses, this was through going to him several. He didn't say it to me. The first time I disclosed to the doctor, because I disclosed to a support worker first. Yeah. So I went to him, told him, and went to him again, and he told me that thing. He told me that some people go on to be abusers themselves, and that's something you hear quite a lot. And statistically, is that true?
No,
I don't know.
It's not.
I don't know.
And I also know that because we wrote a letter to the Danish government in relation to a social worker that decided to tell the partner of a childhood sexual abuse victim, "Are you sure you want to be with this man?
Right.
You're letting him into your family with your children." So that's how far that can. I mean, hopefully most people would have more sense than that. But unfortunately, and the vast majority of men who've experienced childhood sexual abuse or adult assault do not go on to sexually abuse.
No, that's.
I mean, how many people have their house burgled go on to burgle other people's houses?
Exactly. But it's always been a myth that I've heard of, and for some reason it's there. It's just there. I mean, that there is. It's. I would like to say it's a myth.
So in a way, that is the other part of what Momentum is about. Is about education and awareness.
I would just like to say for the new listeners and for I found Momentum through the Exeter Devon NHS Trust, and lucky enough, a mental health support worker did finally give me one of your leaflets. I took it home for my mum to read to me, and finally plucked up the courage to give Momentum a call. And I was very, as soon as I met John first. John here is the first line of contact, and met him individually, and then went to the group, and I felt right at home, really. You feel comfortable. I felt safe, and it's surprising how many experiences that other people have you can relate to yourself, and experiences that other people have had you can also relate to yourself, so you can relate to each other. And it's so powerful, because I disclosed in 2016. I was 24 at the time, and it took me 16 years. So lucky enough, it didn't take me 26 years. And
that's good.
And before that, I was all over the place. I even went through a stage of shoplifting, and it was all to try and cope. So and nobody knew why because I never done things like that before in my life. Growing up like most people do. So a lot of the time, drink, alcohol, drugs. A lot of the time, it's all a coping mechanism to cope. And under the surface, there's some normally related trauma that hasn't been dealt with, and people need to treat the underlying problem before they can move on. But I would just like to reiterate that it is very, very, very possible to make a full recovery, and people can go on and live a reasonably good life, and recovery is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true, isn't it? And I know It's wonderful. It's wonderful that we've met and we're working here together this morning. And when I think the states I was in, and I was effectively told that I would never recover from my mental illness, and the best thing for me to do is to keep taking psychotic drugs and to go on to an ill health pension. But when I started meeting people that understood about trauma and started talking to me about that, and really started supporting me and looking at the underlying cause and helping me deal with that very gently, very carefully.
Yeah.
So here I am. I'm working full time. It'd be lovely if somebody paid me, but I'm working full time. And coping with my life and enjoying life.
That's great. Yeah.
So that's where it is.
That's the message that we want to. That's the message that we want to spread for anybody listening.
Absolutely.
And please don't feel ashamed.
No, that's the hardest thing. Ashamed. But however you are feeling, know that we understand that.
And know that.
And you can talk to us.
Know that if you do feel ashamed, there's no shame in that either.
Yeah.
Just talk about it.
Yeah.
Just talk about it.
However you are feeling, the part that wants to be here, the part that doesn't, the part that feels ashamed, the part that feels strong, however you're feeling, come to us. And I think related to that, I was talking to a senior mental health manager at one time, and he said to me, if a man is brave enough to disclose his sexual abuse, we should support him. But I would say, why don't we support him if he's not brave enough? Why don't we support him if he's afraid? Why don't we support him if he's very confused about how he's feeling and finds it difficult? Support him if he's very enduring and doesn't want to upset his family and everybody else and struggles on despite how he's feeling. So however that person is feeling, they were abused as a child. A crime was committed and they deserve our full support, because it can be any of us in this society.
It can.
When I meet guys, we're from all different walks of life. We've all had different experiences. It's affected us in different ways. But the commonality is, we're all healing, and we want a good life, and we want not to be tripped up by this.
Yeah,
and we can.
We just want to get the message out there.
Yeah.
And thank you for your interview, John.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And you're welcome on anytime.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to be with you, Jonathan. And our number again is 07773 151 080. 07773 151 080, and I will be around with the phone after the show. If you're phoning later, if you ring and you can't get us, that's because we don't have a manned helpline. We're guys with our lives as well, but this really matters, so we will always phone you back as soon as we can.
What was the email again?
Okay, yes, the email. You can also contact us by email. Of course, you can also contact us, if it's too much to phone, you can also text, if that would be a start for you. But you can also get us on momentumdevon@gmail.com. momentumdevon@gmail.com. No spaces and all lowercase. But just know, you would always be welcome. Okay.
Great. And we're going to actually end the show with Linkin Park, One More Night. And I would also just like to say that the head singer of Linkin Park was abused growing up. So a lot of the songs, two of them went through abuse as a child, but sadly the head singer from Linkin Park did take his own life, and the song this song was released in 2017, and it's called One More Light by Linkin Park.